Okay, my name is Matt Vangard. I'm a student at NDSCS, and this is my uh, sheep kidney dissection practical for Dr. Nate Weber um, in Anatomy and Physiology 2. Okay, so here we have the kidney, and I apologize for the terrible video quality. It's just the camera I have on my laptop. Okay, so here we have the sheep kidney. So there are a few structures that are immediately evident just by looking at the outside of the sheep kidney. The first one is the renal capsule, which is, this whole thing. The renal capsule is dense irregular connective tissue. Basically, all it does is protect the kidney and also helps maintain the shape of the kidney. Another structure is the hilus here, which has three structures branching out of it. I believe this one, it's the larger of the two, would be the renal vein, and then the smaller one here would be the renal artery, and then we have here the ureter. So the function of the renal vein is to carry deoxygenated, filtered blood from the kidney to the heart via the inferior vena cava. Here we have the renal artery. The function of the renal artery is essentially the renal artery is a branch of the abdominal aorta. So the function of the renal artery is to supply the kidney with oxygenated blood. So vein is carrying deoxygenated blood back to the heart via the inferior vena cava, and the artery over on this side is carrying oxygenated blood and supplying the kidney with oxygenated blood. Here we have the ureter. We will discuss the ureter in a couple moments. So then we did a frontal section, a frontal cut of the kidney. We opened it, and immediately we can see the renal cortex, which is this structure right up here, the very outer portion of the kidney. The renal cortex contains various structures. For example, the renal corpuscle, which is a site of blood filtration, so it filtrates that blood. Below the renal cortex, we have the medulla, which is the inner portion of the kidney. The renal medulla is made up of several pyramid-shaped structures, and those structures are aptly named renal pyramids. They are relatively difficult to see on my kidney, but we can point out where they are for sure. And what is the giveaway is that base here, right here, right here, right here, all the way around. So that is the base of the renal pyramid. So we've got renal pyramid, and so we've got the base that meets up with the renal cortex, and then we have the at the apex of the renal pyramid, we have what's a structure that is called the renal papilla that we will discuss in a moment. In between each renal pyramid, we have what are called renal columns. They are just tissue that separates each renal pyramid from each other. And then what we have are renal lobes. So the renal lobe is the renal pyramid and the renal cortex above it. Urine production actually occurs within the renal lobe, so that's why those are important. So I had mentioned before that we have renal papillae. So what happens there is urine is discharged through the renal papillae into a structure that is called the minor calyces. And I tried to dig out the portion of the renal pelvis so I could try to at least see a minor calyx, and I think I may have found some, but it is hard to say for sure. At any rate, what happens with the minor calyces is urine is discharged from the renal papillae into a minor calyces, and then 4 or 5 of those minor calyces converge into form a major calyces or calyx, and then major calyces converge to form what is called the renal pelvis. And the renal pelvis is essentially a large cavity that receives urine from the major calyces, and then that renal pelvis is continuous with the ureter structure, which was out here. And essentially what the ureter is, so urine again goes from the renal papillae in the renal pyramid to the minor calyces. 4 or 5 of those minor calyces converge into a major calyx. Those major calyces converge into a renal pelvis. That renal pelvis is continuous with the ureter here, which is essentially a tube that connects the kidney to the urinary bladder. So the function of the ureter is to transport urine from the kidney to the bladder. And that is all I got for my speech. Thank you very, very much.